welcome. Why don't we start? You can just share with everyone who you are and what you do, and then we will dive on in.
I am Laura Tate, and I am CEO and founder of Empowering Health and Legacies, the Empower Mom Method, which works with moms of newly diagnosed celiac kids, walking them through from the point of diagnosis through understanding and getting that foundation of what that looks like so they're not trapped in their four walls.
Okay, fabulous. And what are we doing here today? How can I help you?
It has been a journey for sure. I think it's a number game. As you've mentioned, enormous. We've had, even when I was in ZTC or 10K ZTC and Impact, getting the marketing, getting the lead gen. I'm not getting it.
Okay.
It's been a year and a half, and I still have nobody to do proof of concept. Nobody took up beta. I've offered it to people. Like, my numbers are not there. And that means I need to pivot, is that we've already tried different lingo, like speaking to my people find me on Facebook, but that's where it kind of stops. Like, I'm not seeing 100 people each month. Even at 25 is hard.
Interesting. And the ads aren't working.
No, I had to stop them at the end of October because financial issues. I was spending approximately $300 a month with I don't know if they were quality leads. They would just sit there, but then again, it's like throwing spaghetti off the wall, at the wall, or like not having enough eyeballs with the whole algorithm and everything else. So
what is the size of your email list?
As of yesterday, it was 383.
383. Okay.
And it's not that I haven't done organic. I have a whole document that I have all my numbers for you if you need to look at that, or something of all the things from podcasts to, I'm on the Celiac Foundation directory site. I've tried LinkedIn to connect with doctors.
So do you want to open it up to people who are just newly diagnosed with celiac?
Potentially, I guess. That's my question.
What's the name of your program?
The Empower Mom Method.
What's the lead magnet?
The lead magnet right now is the do's and don'ts of having a newly diagnosed celiac kid.
What audiences were you putting it to?
Ooh, I've had Up a Baby. Because I worked even with Miranda on different, the higher end, different approaches. I've done Sandals Resort. I have done Starbucks. I have done different stores. I've done makeups. I think even done cars or SUVs. I've worked with Kevin numerous times.
Hold on. I'm looking on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel celiac? My brain is like CELIAC.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Before I just want to.
So I know we looked on Facebook before to see who's running ads, and most of the people weren't running ads.
I just want to see. What's low? Okay.
Because we've changed my business name, on my business profile page for Facebook and Instagram, it's RN Celiac Warrior Mama. We've tried, I don't know. That's why I'm like, do I pivot? How do I reach these people? Or
would you be open? What's your Instagram?
RN_celiac_warrior_mama. I think that's what it is. Yeah. So that is a well-known, she does more adults. She's a dietitian. She works also, they did a collaboration with the Celiac Space, which is another dietitian celiac. She doesn't go towards kids. And she's more restaurant-based, being out and about. I've looked at I looked at different people that just have different ICAs, but.
Here's what my thought is. I think that if you were to open it up to, okay, I'm going to say the things and then we'll narrow it down. So I think if you were to open it up to people who are newly diagnosed with celiac, but then also in your content on Instagram and in your Facebook group, talk about your experience with your own child and like strategies with children. Because as a mom, if I'm looking up celiac nutrition, I'm not going to type in for kids. Like, I'm not going to necessarily do that. I'm going to search for it. And then if your content talks about kids, I'm going to find you. Or even if it doesn't, I'll say, does this apply? Right? So you can talk about that. So I wonder if we just did the do's and don'ts, like guide for newly diagnosed celiacs as the lead magnet. So within that, I saw that other person, you said she focused mostly on restaurants, right? So is there a focus that you want to have within celiac?
It is teaching your kid how to do it. Like, I'm sure if you can drop your daughter off someplace and she can order for herself, or she can tell her best friend, mom, what to do, because you're not with them 24/7. So my thing is they do it with them, as well as empowering them to know that how to take control of their diagnosis, if that makes sense.
Got it. So what if that's just in general and it's not just for the child, right? So teaching you how to become a successful celiac, right? Like, what if that's the way it is, right? It's the do's and don'ts for newly diagnosed celiacs. And then you can talk, like, your whole Instagram feed is like do's and don'ts. The do's and don'ts at restaurants, the do's and don'ts for traveling, the do's and don'ts for children birthday parties, the do's and don'ts for this, the do's and don'ts for that. Like, that can be the hook and the brand. Everything can be like, oh, do you want to, and you can do like mini guides, right? The do's and don'ts for traveling, for adult celiac, children celiac, right? In one guide, right? The do's and don'ts for birthday parties or family events, holidays, right? And in each guide for adults and for children, right? And so you have it for both. And your whole like shtick is like the do's and the don'ts, right? So you can do carousels, you can do, right? Even language, do's and don'ts, right? Teaching your children, here is language to do, here is language, don't apologize. Right? Don't feel bad. How to advocate, right? The do's and don'ts for advocating for your child, the do's and don'ts for the child to advocate. Like, the whole thing can be around the do's and the don'ts, right? And then you can open it up to newly diagnosed celiacs, teaching you how to become a successful, healthy celiac. The modern celiac, whatever it is, right? Like the successful, right? The guide to becoming a successful celiac, the do's and don'ts to become a successful celiac, right? The webinar can be something like, what's the webinar now?
3 things that every parent of a newly diagnosed celiac kid should know that their doctor might not have said.
Right. So take out parent and kid, right? 3 must do strategies, something like that. Like the 3 never talked about strategies for you to become a successful celiac, something like that your doctor wouldn't have told you, or something like that. Like, you can play around with it, but like, don't change it too much, but just take out the parenting part. And then that way your Instagram content and your lead magnet, the painful problem is that they're overwhelmed and that they feel like ass. Right? The do's and don'ts when taking out gluten, the do's and don'ts to having a gluten poisoning, right? Like all of that, right? So your Instagram is like valuable to them, right? They're saving it, right? The do's and don'ts to getting glutened. The do's and don'ts to like fighting with your child. The do's and don'ts when you have a flare up. The do's and don'ts around a celiac rash, like the whole 9. Right. And then it's not just for kids, but there is content there for kids. And then that way you've now opened it up and you become like this reputable, brand for newly diagnosed celiacs to help them become a successful celiac.
And then that means adjusting my actual program then just for celiac versus kids. Or is that, well, I could add different, because everything I've spoke to is more of like, hey, moms, take time. Like the action step was like, take time to read a book about celiac to them in a way they understand. Or
I would leave everything that you have and add in the extra don't change anything, just where needed, add in modules. Like add in training to the module.
Okay.
For now. Because what I don't want you focusing on fixing the program so much. I want you focusing on getting the lead gen and getting some ads up if you can, or even like really, if you're going to do organic, really put focus on Instagram. If you're going to just run with organic, do reels and do carousels, like the do's and the don'ts, right? Like trending sounds, that kind of stuff. And really put focus on Instagram.
Okay.
If you're going to do organic.
Okay.
Right? Where it's like, if we say, what was your thing again? It was RN.
Celiac warrior mama.
I'm going to just do a little like auditing here. So let's do a little fun Instagram audit on yours. So if we look here, I would say instead of CEO and founder of Empowering Health and Legacy, because nobody knows what this means, I would put here RN, and I would say newly diagnosed nurse, registered nurse for celiacs.
Okay.
Right? Put that here. Registered nurse for newly diagnosed celiacs. And then here it's fine. RN, Cert Natural Health Pro. You can say here, supports newly diagnosed celiacs. Underneath, you could put mama to celiac child. Because maybe people don't know what this means. Celiac, like, right? We're not going to language, right? Mama to celiac child can help you something like the do's and don'ts to become a successful celiac. Right? Because this empowering health and legacy like is irrelevant.
Yep.
Right? That's irrelevant. And then when we go here, right? So that's will be like, right? You just take out the kids, right? Do's and don'ts, newly diagnosed celiac guide. Right? So we're literally just gonna put here free guide, the do's and don'ts to becoming a successful celiac. Without causing increased risk of being glutened, added damage to your gut, or being left out. Right? And we're going to just say, get access to the do's and don'ts guide to become a successful for newly diagnosed celiacs. And then that way, we're going to put some focus on, and even like without your face, carousels, right? The do's and the don'ts. And you can very easily use the content themes that we have for you to create that kind of content.
Okay.
You know, the 3 do's to support your child, the 3 don'ts to navigating an office party, right? Like stuff like that. And not everything has to be a do and a don't, but that's the majority of it. So when somebody comes to your feed, right? When somebody comes to your feed, like, so for example, if I'm new and I like happen to land on your feed, even just scroll, okay? So, because that's what people do on their phone, right? I don't really know
what I do.
Nope. Because that's how fast people are scrolling. Right?
Yeah.
Versus, I'll just show you.
Yeah.
Right? Never used to grow my online coaching business, how I turned my one-to-one practice, right? The exact, if I was getting started as a new coach, right? Working one-to-one clients. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Right? Go online.
Yep.
Right? Very clear. It's very clear what I do.
Yep.
So I think that's a way for you to improve. And I think that if you were to open it up to becoming a successful celiac, and then you can say, what is a successful celiac? Right? It's someone who advocates, it's someone who knows, it's someone who can like avoid being glutened, whether it's you or your child. Right? And we're going to open it up. And that way you can use Instagram to be able to really attract people who are newly diagnosed, or even you can even go so far as think you have celiac, but don't want to go through, right? The do's and don'ts to diagnosis. Right? Here's what to do if you don't want to go through the diagnosis process. Like, think about that type of ideal client, right? Should you put your child through the diagnosis process?
Right.
Is it worth it? How about you just operate like they're a celiac, like, right? So I think if you think about it that way, right, there's some good room for improvement.
For sure.
Right? Where you're not necessarily giving up on the niche per se, right? But you're broadening it enough that the ads will now attract, right? Both parties, right? Because anybody who has a newly, like, they're going to download that guide anyway and make it applicable to their child. And I think
so that
also
means changing the ad copy appropriately. So, okay.
And I think the issue too, I don't know the numbers, I would assume, given even just what we were looking at on Instagram and whatnot, like even the hashtag was like 20,000 people, right? I think maybe it's still too new in terms of diagnosed. I think in the US, I think people I don't think it's caught on yet. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't. I think we operate in a bubble because we operate in a bubble. And obviously there are children being diagnosed as celiac, obviously. But I don't know that the diagnosis audience is big enough to support that yet. I think the totality of celiac in general is, but I don't know. Like, do we know how many children get diagnosed a year?
I think it's about 1% of the 1 to 3% of the population get diagnosed. Of that, I think half of it is children.
So curious. Yeah, 1% of the population, or 1 in 1, but it says Canadians. It doesn't say children.
And that's even for the US. And then I think half of that is actually children.
Canada.
Yeah.
And it says 90% of celiac disease remains undiagnosed. So I think it would be better if we broadened the entry, right? I think that would make sense if we just broadened the entry and made the brand a bit more hooky around becoming a successful celiac, and like the do's and don'ts, and it being very clear about your experience and your expertise. And I think it'll also give you more top talking content, right? If we can do like holiday parties, birthday parties, right? Vacations with family, right? How to navigate like your child at school, how to talk to the teachers. Like, there needs to be more content about that.
Yeah. And that's what I was afraid of. I was like, and I've asked others and I've done research, like, if you suggest, I'm a CEO now, like, what is it? And looking at, they're like, I think you're just ahead of your time. They're not ready for that,
I think so. I mean, I was surprised, like, even just the like, if the hashtag would have been over 1 million, I would have been like, no, we're good. But like, not that I make decisions based on hashtags, but it contributes to the conversation. The fact that I went through even like 5 or 6 of those top ranking pages and none of them had over 1,000 followers. Right? And the ones that have followers are not specific to kids. Right? So I think, I mean, did we even do like the Amazon book search?
I haven't done that in a long time.
Okay, let's go in quickly because we have a minute. Let's go and look at celiac. Here, I'll share my screen. I do think though that broadening it in this sense celiac kids. Let's see. Yeah, like look at the results, right? They're like simplistic, you know? And like they don't even have a lot of comment reviews. Like this one does because it's a cookbook. But look at even like, right, birthday cake, right? Like it's niched still.
Yeah. And those are the top that came up, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Like, right? Like, look, like this was not written recently. You can tell.
Right.
By the cover. Yeah. They're kids' books. Interesting. And they're cookbooks.
Which don't always go through the whole social, emotional, and physical side of everything, right?
Yeah. I definitely think. Now, here's the thing. If you want to go the kids route, it'll have to be recipe based.
And that as an RN, it's not really my thing. Yeah.
Right. So clearly, because that's what's being searched, right? So if we look at like the market, right? Parents are searching for gluten-free recipes for their kids, right? That's what they're searching for. So if you did, for example, I guarantee if you did a lead magnet that was recipe based, it would have worked.
Okay.
So it's something for you to think about. I recommend that you broaden it and that you create this. You're a nurse, so you have the authority, right? The do's and the don'ts to become a successful celiac.
Okay. And then can I just change like my Facebook group name and stuff? Like, okay.
What's the page name?
Mamas of Celiac Kids.
So just change it.
Okay.
Right? I would even just do like celiac coaching, like something so simple.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Start there.
Yep.
And you know what? Follow up with me in like a month in the alumni, like come back and we'll do a follow up because I want to make sure that we start growing your audience.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool. Awesome.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Awesome. You are so welcome.